Chloe Radcliffe, welcome to the podcast. We made it happen.
We made it happen. Thank you for having me on. Uh, Out of an amazing random chance meeting in Williamsburg.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you accepted. And I really thought you're like, yeah, I'll do it. When you said, yeah, I'll do it, I'll get on the podcast. First thing I thought was like, she's not going to do it. That's the automatic. I was like, I say that to things that I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, I'll go to that birthday party. I'll go
hmm
do this. I'll go on that talk. And I'm just like, I don't want to do this. And I'm just glad that you are actually here doing this.
Yeah. Well, there's also like there are a lot of podcasts. I don't quite know exactly what made me be like, yeah, for sure I'll do this. Because there's a million podcasts that I get asked to do and have done that I've been like, well, that was a waste of my time. And this one I was just like, for sure. I don't know what I think it's probably partially that you're in such a different world than I am. That I'm like equally as excited to learn about your world as I am as you might be to learn about mine. So anyway, I'm still also I don't know how much I'm really going to learn about your world on this podcast,
We can
but
talk
yeah,
about it. We can talk about
good
it.
vibes.
But one thing to say to everyone listening or everyone watching is Chloe accepted this when my podcast was not even live. So this is essentially saying, "Hey, I got this thing happening. Do you want to get on?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And I was like, I flipped it. That made me more generous in life, by the way. That just changed my life in that moment. What I mean by that is like I would have said no,
That's so funny.
and you
Maybe
said
it's just that
yes.
I have low standards.
No, it's just you're just generous about that. Maybe it has to do with your profession and taking chances and then seeing someone who's trying something out and you're like, maybe I can help. And but for
Yeah,
that it was crazy because on the way home I was thinking to myself, why would she say yes? I wouldn't do it. It's wild. But I'm glad you're
yeah,
here.
yeah. I'm
But to
glad to be
get
here.
into it, we have to address the elephant in the room for me,
hmm hmm
which is I have this unbelievable pressure to be funny on this podcast.
That's okay. So let me. I want to like take that 100% away. First of all, because it's so common for people to like try way too hard to be funny, and then or especially around comics. Like this is a thing that comics interact with all the time, where a non-comic is like trying very hard to be funny, and then it's like, well, now it's just like we're in this weird stilted performance. Like not, this happens with everybody all the time, and like it winds up being people are making like really stupid bad jokes, and it's like, and also the other comment that comics all comics experience all the time is non-comics saying, oh, you're not as funny off stage as I thought you would be. And we're always like, yeah, it's because we are also like regular normal people who have regular normal conversations. So I don't worry about being funny at all. This is not I'm sort of into like I get to be funny on stage, I get to be funny for my job, and I think I'm like funny as a person, but also I get so earnest. My friends give me shit all the time for being like too earnest and too sincere, and I wind up being like gullible and I take jokes seriously. And so yeah, I'm all about earnestness. I'm all about like genuine conversation.
Great. So I can take the funniness off. It was like a
Yeah,
secondhand smoke in a sense that I need to be funny as I can be, which is not much. So I was just like, how am I gonna do this? I've been interviewing
yeah.
business people.
I would say you trying to be funny is probably going to be the least funny possible. Like it'll be funny for the absolute wrong reason, you know. So
Yeah. Well, then let's get into that. So, pressure to be funny. I am a fan of stand-up comedy. It's actually going back to my life. When I first immigrated here, I didn't know how to speak English. I learned how to speak English in two ways. One, reading Clifford the Big Red Dog
don't.
at the age 13. Two, watching stand-up comedy with subtitles.
Wow. With Korean subtitles.
No, English
No, with
subtitles.
English subtitles.
And that was it because I couldn't watch the news. My mom was brushing up her on her like English by watching the news, and I couldn't watch CNN. I was like, this is just not it. And then so I started watching stand-up comedy, and that's like way back when they had the last Comedy Stand. Like that fan was on the Comedy Central. Like I'm
Whoa.
going like way back into stand-up comedy
Yeah.
world, and I started watching it, and it's kind of easy to read, and it taught me a lot of things that I wasn't used to. Sarcasm, for example, and deadpan humor, all of these things.
hmm
And I just found it because most of the comics, to be honest, weren't funny because they weren't funny. It's just because I couldn't understand the cultural tone.
Right. Right.
So now, like, I didn't
So if
understand
you
sarcasm. I didn't understand any of those things.
if you learned English through stand-up comedy and you're still not funny, then it's probably just about you, you know?
I think it's me. I think it's me. Good thing I didn't go that route. I was like, could I be? And I was like, nah, it's not me. I can't do it. It's me. Now, for you, pressure to be funny. Like, what is that? What is that like? When I first came to New York to go to school at NYU, I went to
Mhm.
Gotham, I went to Cellar, I went to Caroline's, and just it's an intimate setting. And I never watched stand-up comedy in that moment before where like the table's literally at your feet
Mhm. Mhm.
and you can hear all the little chatters like behind me,
Mhm.
and then I'm like, I know the comic up there is hearing what's being said over
Absolutely.
there, or like someone's
Absolutely.
not even paying attention, which would drive me nuts. So Chloe, can you explain, you being funny here is different than you going on stage and having the pressure to be funny, and what's that like?
The you're 100% right that they are two different things. And I think that the pressure to be funny off stage is oftentimes from also like I'm sure you are like you definitely are a funny person and maybe in a different way than like a professional comedian is, but I think like anybody who has to sort of like get around adversity in their formative years, in their teenage years, I think it's very common for people to learn how to like use humor as a deflection or as a connection. um I have a huge birthmark on my face. That's like a lot of my humor came from like learning how to charm people past them just seeing my birthmark. So like I want them to see funny person, not just birthmark person. I'm sure there are parallels with that in the immigrant experience. I don't know, you know, I'm not familiar with that, but like I think that so many people learn how to use humor in their formative years. But then yes, you're totally right that it is different to also see, listen to this. I listen to how serious I get. I'm like I get very like TED talky, you know, I'm not, yeah, no pressure to be funny on this. Yeah, so the way to then the way that that pressure shows up when I'm performing on a stage, when I'm in a professional environment, it is different, and it's like more of a practice than sort of an off the cuff like at a party making people laugh, getting people to connect with you. It's definitely related. Definitely still like trying to charm the room. Um, and connect with the room, and the best performance is always when you are hyper present, when you're hyper in the room, when everybody feels like this what they are watching can only happen in this moment, when like it doesn't feel rehearsed, it doesn't feel like, oh, this person just does this bit every night. um I, you know, in terms of like the distraction, in terms of I guess my head goes in two different directions. There's like the pressure to land a punchline, like what happens if a punchline doesn't land and what happens if you bomb. That I'm always like, it feels bad, but that's like the rawest but also simplest level. That's like if a line bombs, I'm like, okay, I just know that I have to fix that line, or I have to fix my delivery, or like something, you know, like I that's like a problem that I can solve basically, or I can cut that line if I can't get the line to work. Like that's a problem that I can solve. That people are always like, man, a line bombing must be the scariest thing in the world, and it's like, no, that's just like somebody editing your work. Like you just have to be willing to edit your own work. Um, but the kind of stuff of like, yes, the chatter that's going on in, you know, like, yeah, feeling people be distracted, hearing stuff, what's going on, you know, something happens in the back of the room and now people are paying attention to that and I have to keep people's eyes on me. That is the like skill of being a comedian, of being a performer, um, of knowing exactly how to address something, of knowing when to address something, and whether, usually the answer is, I think, yes, address it, because other people in the room are going to be distracted. Um, all of that is like, that's not pressure to be funny, that's pressure to, excuse me, like keep the magnetism on me and not let the gravitational pull of anything else in the room be stronger than my gravitational pull, if that makes sense. And that just comes from like years of doing it.
Do you remember the first time when you lost attention? Meaning you're
Mm.
on there, it's your first time doing it, or it doesn't have to be your first time. Maybe it's your new material, or it's been going well for you, but then the room start kind of getting away from you. Do you
It's
remember
so
that
funny.
moment?
uh I mean, I certainly don't remember the first time, but like that happens at least once a week still. Like, it's not that's what you're describing is such a common experience. And it's not a like, I think that losing that attention is not a failing of the comedian, but I think the comedian then not getting back on top of that when that happens, like, it's very natural for the energy in a room to slip away. But then it is the performer's job to be like, come back, come back, come back, 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 eyes on me, over here, over here. And that, like, that is then, I'm like, I'm trying to think, it's like when you're riding a bike, of course you're going to like lose control of the bike for a second because you're not paying. Even an incredibly skilled biker is going to like, the bike is going to kind of like wobble for a second because you weren't paying attention in exactly the right moment, or because you hit a bump that you didn't see or whatever. But then a skilled biker can get the bike absolutely, like, within an instant, can regain control of the bicycle. And an unskilled biker is gonna, like, that wobble is gonna start to overpower the ride. And that is, I think, the difference. I think that's like the difference between a skilled performer. So, like, do I remember a time? I'm like, I don't know, a couple days ago, for sure. I actually would say, like, in terms of what's the first time of doing that, or like early memories of that dynamic, I think I don't have any early memories of that dynamic because that was so common. And that the newer you are, the less able you are to control that slip away. And so then when you're new, you're just like, I'm just going to keep saying my bits because I don't know what else to do. I'm just like a robot who's doing my rehearsed little jokes. And that it's not. Now I'm much, much, much better at being like, okay, here's what's happening. And I'm in control. I'm in power. I'm in the center of this. And that when you're new, it's like you're not. The room is in control, not the performer.
What is the internal dialogue like? The reason I'm asking that is even though I'm not a stand-up comedian, like, I think everyone, for the most part, that listens to this podcast or watches it will have a moment in their work career where they're giving a presentation, and in a way you're bombing, but nothing like stand-up comedy. But people are not paying attention. You can see them on something else, and it's like the same thing when I look at, like, it's just, how do you, like, what's your internal dialogue like when you see someone not paying attention? My case, so bad, I start hyper focusing on that one person.
Yes.
Like, why aren't you listening to what I'm presenting? I worked on this. Like, pay attention. So what's your internal dialogue like?
For sure. So I'm going to give like an answer just like 10 degrees to the left of this. So internal monologue of like, why is that person not, that's like my radar is constantly scanning of like, who's with me, who's locked in with me, who's not locked in with me, who's paying attention, who's not paying attention. I worked on this, whatever, all of that kind of stuff like that. Yes, that's totally normal. I totally get that. But then I think the next step that a professional performer has, and this I think is like applicable to people who are just giving a presentation and a job, like I think that this is, it's not easy. It takes practice, but it's fairly simple. To me, the questions that I am always trying to answer when I'm like trying to regain control of the room, after the energy slips to something else, the questions that I'm answering is one of these two or both. One is, what is actually happening in the room? Like, what is the actual dynamic? Not even like, what are people reacting to? It's literally just like, it's just the broadest, what is the actual dynamic in the room? Not what is the dynamic that I want in my performance right now. I want people to pay attention to my bits and they're so good. I want people to pay attention to my PowerPoint because I worked hard on it. It's, what is the actual dynamic in the room? Is it literally like the room is so hot that people are falling asleep because it's warm? Is it that like I am the last in a very long show, or like I'm giving a PowerPoint presentation at the end of an incredibly long meeting and people are like feeling like, God damn, it's really late and I really just want to go. What is the actual dynamic? Because responding to that honestly and directly is going to be the thing that gets people back. Like that is the thing that allows me to regain control. It's the kind of like, I would rather, this is a broader principle, but like I would always rather hear negative feedback in any way about my writing or about an interpersonal interaction or whatever. I would always, and like I'm using feedback, which is kind of a corporate term, but like I would always rather know what's actually not working, because then I can adjust that. Then I can respond to that directly, as opposed to like living in my own delusional world of this is what I wish that XYZ was working. I wish that my writing was just good automatically. I wish that this interpersonal interaction was like smooth without me trying. But it's like, yeah, who gives a shit if you wish that it was all good? If it's not functional, you need to directly engage with whatever's not functional and address it, and like make the choice to address it without ego. And that's so I think the like broadest question is, what is the actual dynamic in the room? And when you're like, this person hyperfixating, this person isn't paying attention, it's like, well, is it just that one person and they are a rude asshole? Then if that's, but that is the actual dynamic in the room, right? That's an answer, that everybody else loves it and there's this one person who doesn't like it. If that's the actual dynamic, then the response to how to engage with that is, you gotta ignore that person. But if it's like, this person is representative of the energy in the room, then the response has to be, I'm gonna deal with this. And the secondary, sorry, I know I'm really monologuing here, but the secondary question that is like that is related to that and that's more specific to comedy is, I am always trying to answer the question, what is funny about this? All of my
Wow.
punchlines are just answers to the question, what is funny about this? It's why like I don't really write in analogies. A lot of comics write in it, like Mark Norman writes in, this dynamic is just like this dynamic, and like that's just not how I write, because to me that's not just a direct answer to the question, what is funny about this? And so like, if I'm in a room and I've asked myself the question, what is the honest dynamic going on in this room? Oh, the honest dynamic is, I just like, my dad is in the room watching this stand-up set, and this happened a long time ago. Like I've learned the lesson to not do this, but like I pointed out early in my set that my dad is in the room. And now if I tell a sex joke, everybody feels uncomfortable because they know that my dad is in the room. My dad has seen me do sex jokes. I personally feel fine with that, but the audience doesn't know that and they're uncomfortable. So now I've answered the full dynamic. That's the dynamic that's going on in the room. And then my secondary question is, what is funny about this? And so the answer can be, you guys don't know that my dad and I are fine with this material, but you guys are sitting there going, fuck, 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 fuck. Her dad is listening to this. What's going to happen? And literally, I just answered, what is funny about this? That's the whole thing. And it made you laugh. It can make the audience laugh. It can put everybody at ease. Now I've both answered the question, what is funny about this, and dealt with the genuine dynamic that's going on in the room. And now I can go back to whatever I need to go back to. And also I can take away the lesson, don't point out when your dad is in the room, Chloe. Like, that is... So I would say, does that answer the question? That's like, I
That
think,
answered the question.
great.
Not only
Anyway,
that,
an
it was
incredibly
like
thorough.
yeah, it was thorough, and I love the clarity. Just singular purpose. What is funny about this? And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, that comes from you mastering your craft, continuing to master your craft. I showed your comedy to people that don't necessarily watch comedy that are within my friends group. And then the first thing they mention is like, "Oh, is she a New York comic?" And
Really?
and I said, "Yeah, why?" And they're like, "I can tell." And I'm like, "How can you tell she's a New York comic?" And he goes, "Crazy amounts of road work in the tiniest rooms." And for some reason, that never stood out to me. Like I just see your comedy, and I don't think about because I've been watching you from like just in the comedy scene, so it's a little bit
Mm-hmm.
different. But when they said that, I'm like, I guess Chloe does do a lot of road work, and obviously you're
Are
coming
you saying,
back.
like go out to like around the country and then come back to New York? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and then even within New York, just small places, constantly going out to
Yes.
small places. You're traveling around, you're getting on different things, and just one like basically life on the road. You're testing your materials out everywhere, and I know a lot of comics sometimes do that, or some don't. Some just like to stay at their home base comedy club, and they just continue to work there. And people come to you. In your case, you're doing inbound and outbound.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to ask about that life on the road. And the reason I ask about that is there's a broader theme here is when you have a group of friends, you kind of assume some type of role. You're either the parent of the group, or
Mm-hmm.
you're the funny guy, or you're the person that's responsible, like whatever it may be. And it's just the same thing in terms of corporate world as well. You
Mm-hmm.
assume a certain role, and then that tag is on you. So from that point on, you're basically that. And they'll accept you for that. So what is this going back to your life on the road? Around my friends, I might be funny. And I make jokes about, let's say I make sex jokes, right? And then I'm the guy that makes sex jokes within my group.
Hmm.
But in your case, it's just materials after materials. You're just constantly changing. Your jokes from 5 years ago is not the same. You're evolving as a person. So what you find funny is also different.
Hmm.
So what is that process like when you're going on the road to people that you never met? This is essentially you leaving your job, leaving your friend group, and you're showing up in Boise, Idaho at a small club, or Fort Myers, Florida at some club near Naples, or Fort Myers, or something random like that. So what's that like? Do you get nervous, or like why do you even do that when you could just stay in New York for or and fly out to LA once in a while?
Yes. So, okay, there's a bunch of thoughts in there. First of all, in terms of the like identity, the like label that you get within a friend group, I think it's very fun. Like the comedian, I get on a stage in front of strangers and I basically get to like position myself how I want to be seen. Or try to position myself as close to how I want to be seen, knowing that like if I fuck up, they're gonna be like, "Oh, she's not funny." Like I'm, it's sort of a high risk, high reward, right? But like, a huge part of going on stage every single night is charming strangers, and which is my favorite game to play possible. It's a tightrope act. And in terms of like, why do I go on the road? Why do I go out? Why do I think that there is so I think even beyond traveling to like other places around the country, what you're identifying is that like there is this New York drive, there is this expectation. I'm trying to not say hustle or grind because like it's so funny. Those were words like before YouTube grind culture. That was like people talked about that in comedy of like the New York grind, the New York hustle. And there is this expectation among New York comics that you are performing at least once a night, if not multiple times a night. If you are a working comedian, you should be on shows every single night. And I don't that, a lot of smaller cities just like don't have enough opportunities to make that true, to make that even possible. And then in LA, I think LA like doesn't really have enough stage time to make that fully like New York is really the only place where that's 100% possible. But so then like when I go to LA, I book myself shows every single night, and people in LA are like, ugh, New York comedians always trying to get stage time, always trying to perform. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's our job to perform. What do you mean New York comedians? And there is just this different, like, there is this kind of like electricity to the New York stand-up scene of like, you gotta be fucking working. And I love that. And I like it really, really, really works for me. I love that buzz. I love that like constant push. A friend of mine said that anybody who's successful in entertainment is crazy, and anybody who's actually successful, he said anybody who is like seriously, seriously successful in entertainment is his line, running from the devil. And that will be with me forever. And I think he's right. And I think that that's probably true in most fields. Like, I don't think that's just true of entertainment. But so the idea of like, you're out every single night, you're fucking working, like, is part of that running from the devil? Probably. But I love it. I'm here with it.
Did you always have that mentality to go like like make that because one of the things I remember a long time ago, one of my other comics that I enjoy, Nate Bargatze, I
Mm-hmm.
like his comedy, and I also
Mm-hmm.
like his individuality of like
Mm-hmm.
sticking to it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a long time ago when he did a podcast where he talked about when he was just trying to make it here. He came from Chicago, and then he was trying to make it here. And he had a friend, they're working the doors, giving the tickets out, and then they're going on stage. And he was
Yep.
mentioning, he's like, "Oh, what are you doing this weekend?" And the fellow comic said, "Oh, it's actually my time to spend with my girlfriend or something like that. So I take those days off, or Mondays and Sundays off." And they said, "Oh, that sounds great." And then I'm paraphrasing here, and he's like, "He's never gonna make it." and then,
Mm-hmm.
and then, and then just even when you watch his persona, it's like, oh, hey, like I'm a friendly guy, but work ethic's crazy. And then one of the things, if you watch your comedy or anybody that watches Chloe's comedy on YouTube or anywhere, you'll see on the comments, her energy is so good. I'm just laughing because she's having a good time on there. But on the back end, what I'm hearing here is you're an animal. just, you're just getting after it. Like, so how did you always have that, or is this something that you're adopting? You're like, what is it?
I I think I have always had the like I've always been an overworker for sure. I used to funnel that energy into other directions. I competed in speech and debate for 10 years and like was way, way, way an overworker in speech. Um, excuse me. I've always been a performer. I've always had the drive to like to be on stage, to be in front of people. I totally get that like the Bargatze, and he's so awesome, and I get that mentality of like you hear somebody be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take time off, or I'm gonna spend time with whatever, and the thought is like, well, nice knowing you, like nice to be, you're a hobbyist basically. It's funny because I look back at my early years in like starting in Minneapolis and then the first couple years in New York, I look back and I'm like, man, I could have been working so much harder. I kind of beat myself up for not spending for like for spending hours and days and weeks and months just like maybe a couple days a week I was working hard on something else, but not every single day. And now I'm at the point in my career where like I'm working hard every day. I just have a 10-hour workday. And if I take if I like spend 2 days in a row where I don't do 10-hour workdays, and again, all of these are assuming that I also like I'm leaving the house at night to go do stand up. I like beat myself up, and I think that also, I don't know. I have to like I don't even want to say like I have to find a balance, because it's like no, the people who are successful aren't balanced. The people who are successful live crazy lives and like wind up losing out on a lot of shit, and but also like I have to find a way to make it sustainable for me. I do have to like take enough breaks that I'm not, crying in the shower, but also like I really don't buy into balance.
That's
Yeah.
profound because a lot of business school professors, even like Scott Galloway, for example, always say there's no balance. There's no balance
Hmm.
on the road to that, like whatever top 10% achievement. There is no balance, and you need to
Yeah.
prioritize that, or be
Yeah.
honest with yourself and say it's not my priority.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I wrote down while you're speaking that got to me was how or where did you learn to work and be a pro? What I mean by that is there are times in my career, in my life, where I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing something. But in reality, I wasn't doing shit. I thought I
Hmm.
was like really working hard at
Hmm.
something, but I wasn't. And I
Hmm.
didn't know until someone showed me, or I looked at someone and I was like, oh, that's what it actually means to work harder. That's what it means to be a pro. That's what it means to work on yourself. Like it can be the simplest thing, like going to the gym and you do like random videos that you watch, you do a couple times and you see everyone who's doing it like day by day, taking care of their nutrition, working out really hard, measuring
Hmm.
everything. And you're like, oh, that's how you work out. I was wondering why my body hasn't changed in over 27 years. Like,
Hmm.
not that I was doing
Hmm.
something, but I wasn't. So, where did you
Hmm.
learn how to be a pro? Because I'm assuming as you hit different rungs of your milestone, you had to work a little bit more
Yes.
differently.
So, okay, I'm going to give you four short answers. One, competing in speech and debate. By the time I got to college, I started being exposed to like I think I had like raw talent in high school, but I wasn't on a particularly strong team. And then I got to college and was also on not like a crazy strong team, but started to become close with people who were on very strong teams and saw like how they practiced, how they worked, and saw basically I think in speech it was that I saw the potential. Like I watched the ceiling get higher, and I was like, oh, if I think I have the same amount of talent as those people, but I do need to put it into practice differently. So I think that was like my first exposure and my first framework of like wanting a higher ceiling for myself and having to apply that like whatever skill I naturally come in with. Then another thing, I used to rock climb for I used to like climb multiple days a week. I haven't climbed in years, but I miss it all the time. It literally is just that it's such a huge chunk of time to dedicate to. Like, it's like you can't climbing takes 4 hours for a session. Like you can't really go for like just a super quick one. And I know that you like can technically, but it just was never functional for me. And I just like couldn't put that kind of time against it. But I used to climb all the time. And I was in like an adult climbing league in Minneapolis. And one of the guys who was in my league, he and I became sort of like the two best in our little team. We weren't incredible climbers, but we were like, among the casual guys who were on our team, we were the two best. And so we would push each other, and we would like be up on a route and get tired and, I'm sure you have rock climbed before. Yeah. So you like take a break, and then we would be like, we'd like give it one more shot, not be able to make the next move or not be able to make the next, complete the route, take again. And we would say, when he and I were belaying for each other, we would be like, okay, I want to come down. And he started doing this with me, and then I would start doing it with him, where he was like, nope, sorry, I'm actually just not going to let you down. You just actually have to give it one more try. Like, I'm in control here. You can't come down. And I loved that so much. Like, I crave that kind of like pushback and that kind of like, nope, sorry, you don't have an option here. It's like, I think it's like this tough love mentality that I really, really, really like. And then it was like, of course, always that was the time that we made it. Like the time when it was like, nah, you don't have an option. You have to give it another go is the time that like your body pushes hard enough to be like, okay, great. I can make that move. I actually can, or I actually like do have that last bit of gas in the tank to make the rest of the route or whatever. So I think that like taught me that kind of tough love stuff. Oh, another back in speech and debate. This is a tough love. I guess this all like creates a mosaic of how I learned to work. Favorite coach who is still like a dear, dear, dear friend of mine. There were 3 coaches on the team, and 2 of them would be like, you go out, you leave your heart out on that stage. You lay it all out on the line. You like give your best performance, whatever. It's so funny to talk about it in like badass terms, and it's speech and debate, but that's how they would talk about it. And my favorite coach would just hug me before I was going into a big round, and he would just say, like, whisper into my ear, he would go, Radcliffe, don't fuck up. And that was the like hard, that again, the kind of tough love of like, don't fuck up. And it was like, oh yeah, okay, like I can just not fuck up. I'm good enough to do this, to like do the thing that got me here. Anyway, that's I guess kind of a high pressure performance, not hard work. Anyway, so rock climbing. Then biking I bike everywhere in New York, and it's the first, I spend like an hour and a half on my bike a day, and biking is the first like long-term physical practice that I've ever really had. Like I climbed for a long time, and I used to jog all the time, but like hated running, hated every single minute that I ran. Whereas biking was the first time where I was like, oh, I can watch my body become different over years. Like I now, every once in a while, I'll like ride on a hill that I used to ride on when I first moved to New York, and it seemed like such a tough hill. And now I'm like, I don't even think about going, like, it doesn't even strike me as a hill. It's just like a part of the road. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like I can feel the work show up over time. And biking like gave me a model for how to like push through a hard thing. So I think that's another thing. And then the last how to work, and this is really the most significant, 2.5 years ago, right at the end of 2021, beginning of 22, I sold a movie pitch. I'm not a movie. I don't come from a screenwriting background. I'm not like a movie guy. I never dated a movie guy. I like movies are cool, but I'm just not, I have a lot of comedian friends who are like, all I want in the fucking world is to write a movie or to sell a movie. That's what I want. Like that would be a dream. And that's very much wasn't me. And I like really, really, really fell ass backwards into this through a very lucky series of opportunities. And I had to learn how to write a movie while a major studio was paying me to write a movie. And right now the movie is still technically alive. I have no idea whether it'll ever actually get made, but like this, and so I can't say the name of the studio, but it's like one that you would know in a heartbeat. And it's, and they've paid me to write 2 drafts of this movie now. But the first draft I was like, I don't know how to write a fucking movie. And so I literally just went to the library and like checked out the basic movie writing books. It's like Save the Cat is like the most dunked on, commonly read, so boring. No, like it's like whatever, it's valuable in some ways and kind of useless in other ways. I like checked out that, a few others, like really, really, really basic ones, read a bunch of books, watched a shit ton of movies, read a ton of scripts. Once I discovered, because I like made a little worksheet for myself to watch the movies of like, how does it open? What is the like, what happens at minute 3, where is the act break, what's the character dynamics, whatever. I like made these worksheets to watch these movies, and I just like wasn't, I was trying to fill out the worksheet. I was like trying to do it and it wasn't really clicking for me. And then I started reading scripts and I realized, I was like, oh, if I'm writing, I have to be reading. If I was making a movie, I probably would have to be watching movies to learn. But if I'm writing, I need to be reading. And that process of like giving myself homework and working every single day and like waking up early, because like I'm out late at stand up and I love to sleep in because I'm out so late, but it's like, nope, you gotta be up in the morning so that I can be like writing by 9 or reading, doing homework by 9, and every single day work on figuring out how to write a movie. And that it is a day long, write your little scene, do your little character brainstorming every single day, work on this project, and have the terror inside of failing. And like that taught me how to work, and I became addicted to that. I think like the entire locus of my life shifted in that first feature draft, which was in spring of 2022. The whole focus of my life shifted to work from it had been more socializing, and I've just sort of been addicted to that style of work ever since. That was it. Sorry, I keep giving you the longest answers in the world.
No, that was not only inspirational, but so informative in many ways. Hi friends, that's all for part 1 of the conversation. Part 2 will be released next week. If you'd like an early access to episodes, please visit the link in the description. It's easy to subscribe and even easier to unsubscribe. Thank you for listening and see you around.